We become more prone to emotional contagion when we hear someone else express, or when we reveal our own deeply held beliefs and values, or when we describe past experiences that were meaningful to us, or when we expose something else that opens us to others' judgments. Asking deep questions about feelings, values, beliefs, and experiences creates vulnerability.
Welcome to Philosopher Insights, the podcast that delivers wisdom in minutes a day that you can put into practice daily and strive to master over a lifetime.
The podcast committed to sharing ideas that encourage you to bridge the gap between who you are today and the person you aspire to be in the future.
Hi, my name is Herb Lamba, and welcome to my podcast, where I will share practical insights from the world's best authors.
Knowledge isn't power. Applied knowledge is. The quest to become the best version of you starts right now.
Hi, and welcome to Philosopher Insights. My name is Herb Lamba. Today we're discussing Supercommunicators, how to unlock the secret language of connection. The author of this book is Charles Duhigg, and it's published in 2024. I want to share a number of my favorite insights, starting with matching, watch for clues, fast friends procedure, loop for understanding, identity threats, and finish it off with a final thought. So let's begin with the introduction. Quote, "For many of us, conversations can sometimes seem bewildering, stressful, even terrifying. The single biggest problem with communication," said playwright George Bernard Shaw, "is the illusion it has taken place. But scientists have now unraveled many of the secrets of how successful conversations happen. They've learned that paying attention to someone's body alongside their voice helps us hear them better. They have determined that how we ask a question sometimes matters more than what we ask. We're better off, it seems, acknowledging social differences rather than pretending they don't exist. Every discussion is influenced by emotions, no matter how rational the topic at hand. When starting a dialogue, it helps to think of the discussion as a negotiation, where the prize is figuring out what everyone wants. And above all, the most important goal of any conversation is to connect. This book was born in part from my failure at communication. This book, then, is an attempt to explain why communication goes awry and what we can do to make it better." End quote. Welcome to the world of Supercommunicators by Charles Duhigg. This book isn't just another run-of-the-mill guide on communication. Nope, it's like a treasure map leading you to the heart of effective conversation. Duhigg unpacks some insightful ideas that can skyrocket your ability to connect with others. Think of it this way. There are 3 types of chats that can totally revolutionize the way you communicate. There's the practical talk, where it's all about the nitty-gritty of the topic at hand. Then there's the emotional piece, where you plunge into the depths of feelings and understanding. And let's not forget the social chat, where you touch on who you are and what makes you tick. I'm excited to share a few of my top takeaways from this book. Let's kick it off with the first insight. Insight number 1, matching. Quote, "To communicate with someone, we must connect with them. When we absorb what someone is saying and they comprehend what we say, it's because our brains have, to some degree, aligned. At that moment, our bodies, our pulses, facial expressions, the emotions we experience, the prickling sensation on our neck and arms, often start to synchronize as well." End quote. So here's the bottom line with the matching principle in communication. It's all about syncing up your communication style with the type of conversation you're in to build strong connections. This means adjusting how you communicate based on whether you're having a practical, emotional, or social chat. By tuning into your conversation partner's style and matching it, you can establish a sense of connection and mutual understanding, making your interactions more meaningful and engaging. Quote, "Miscommunication occurs when people are having different kinds of conversations. If you are speaking emotionally while I'm talking practically, we are, in essence, using different cognitive languages. Supercommunicators know how to evoke synchronization by encouraging people to match how they're communicating." End quote. Now, please understand that matching can be challenging. It's more than just copying someone's gestures or mood, as that can result in parallel monologues rather than synchronized conversations. To truly connect, we need to differentiate between decision-making, discussions, emotional exchanges, and social interactions. Insight number 2, watch for clues. Quote, "When someone says something and then laughs afterward, even if it wasn't funny, it's a hint they're enjoying the conversation. When someone makes noises as they listen, yeah, interesting. What linguists call back-channeling. When someone asks follow-up questions, it's a clue they're interested, whereas statements that change the subject, like, 'Let me ask you about this other thing,' are hints they're ready to move on." End quote. Now, Duhigg points out that research shows we often breeze past the signs hinting at a shift in conversation direction. It's like we're chatting in different dialects without even noticing, causing us to overlook crucial cues because, let's face it, our attention skills could use a little sharpening. Man, I've been there. You know those moments when you're delicately trying to steer the conversation in a new direction, but it's like the other person's radar is on snooze mode. They just keep plowing ahead with their own agenda, completely deaf to anything you're trying to interject. It's as if they've got blinders on, zeroed in on unloading whatever's rattling around in their brain. Thanks to Charles Duhigg, I've had a light bulb moment, making sure I'm not guilty of doing the very same thing to others. Insight number 3, fast friends procedure. Quote, we become more prone to emotional contagion when we hear someone else express, or when we reveal our own deeply held beliefs and values, or when we describe past experiences that were meaningful to us, or when we expose something else that opens us to others' judgments. Asking deep questions about feelings, values, beliefs, and experiences creates vulnerability. That vulnerability triggers emotional contagion, and that, in turn, helps us to connect. End quote. All right, check this out. The Fast Friends procedure is all about turbocharging the way we connect with others. Now picture this. You're in a structured exchange when you dish out personal info about yourself, and in return, you get a deepened bond. It's like fast-tracking friendship by sharing bits of your soul and listening to theirs. This method, it's like the express lane to building rapport and forging real connections through genuine conversations and mutual sharing. Now let me clue you in on something I've tried out before, and trust me, it works when it comes to really diving into a conversation. See, most people stick to the surface level questions, and that's fine. But if you want to build real connections, you've got to dig deeper with your inquiries. Here's what I mean. Instead of just asking, where do you work? Try something like, what was your favorite job? That's the kind of question that sparks meaningful conversation and gets you past the small talk into the good stuff. If you want to up your conversation game and forge deeper connections, throw in words like most, favorite, or best when you're asking questions. These words make the other person really think, and that's what takes your connection to the next level. Quote, dozens of other studies from the University of Utah, the University of Pennsylvania, Emory, and elsewhere have found that people who ask a lot of questions during conversations, particularly questions that invite vulnerable responses, are more popular among their peers and more often seen as leaders. End quote. So what do you think? Let's shake things up and challenge ourselves to ditch those mundane questions like, did you catch the game last night? That is a total snooze fest, am I right? Let's aim for deeper, more engaging conversations that really make an impact. Trust me, going deep is where the magic happens. Insight number 4, loop for understanding. Quote, so if a listener wants to prove they're listening, they need to demonstrate it after the speaker finishes talking. If we want to show someone we're paying attention, we need to prove, once that person stopped speaking, that we have absorbed what they said. And the best way to do that is by repeating, in our own words, what we've just heard them say, and then asking if we got it right. It's a formula sometimes called looping for understanding. End quote. I jumped right into using this technique the second I stumbled upon it. I believe it's got the power to rescue marriages, fortify family ties, and even elevate your game at work. The aim isn't to parrot back exactly what someone said, word for word. Instead, it's about taking their thoughts, processing them, and then expressing them in your own words. This shows that you're putting in the effort to really grasp their perspective. Rinse and repeat this process until everyone's on the same page. That's how you build understanding and connection. Insight number 5, identity threats. Quote, identity threats are one reason why conversation about who we are can be difficult. When some Netflix employees accused their coworkers of being oversensitive or not Netflix material, it felt to the accused as if they were being forced into a group, petulant complainers. They abhorred or were being excluded from the group, those prepared to succeed at Netflix, to which everyone wanted to belong. End quote. Now, an identity threat kicks off when you tell someone they're part of a group they utterly despise. That triggers a defensive response, and before you know it, they're launching a counterattack. And guess what? Nothing good comes out of this exchange. It's like a vicious cycle with no winners in sight. At this point, you might be thinking, how can I lessen the blow of identity threats? Well, according to Duhigg, it starts with a pre-discussion ritual, asking yourself a series of questions. Questions like, what are your hopes? How will you kick things off? What obstacles could pop up? If they do, how will you handle them? And finally, what good can come out of this conversation? If you're a podcast regular, these questions might ring a bell. They're reminiscent of a strategy Gabriel Oettingen once shared. You got it. WOOP. Wish, outcome, obstacle, plan. WOOP. For a refresher, give episode 136 of my podcast a listen. Insight number 6, final thought. Quote, there is no single right way to connect with other people. There are skills that make conversations easier and less awkward. There are tips that increase the odds you'll understand your companions, and they'll be more likely to hear what you are trying to say. Sometimes we get there. Sometimes we don't. But what is important is wanting to connect, wanting to understand someone, wanting to have a deep conversation, even when it's hard and scary, or when it would be so much easier to walk away. Because whether we call it love or friendship or simply having a great conversation, achieving connection, authentic, meaningful connection, is the most important thing in life. End quote. That is straight from the afterword, and I must say, I thoroughly enjoyed this book. It tackles one of today's most crucial topics head on. It's not just about craving connection. It's about actually pursuing understanding, even when it gets tough or uncomfortable. Making the choice to dive into deep conversations, despite the challenges and fears, shows a real dedication to nurturing relationships and cultivating empathy. Stick to this path, and before you know it, people will be looking at you and saying, "Now there goes a super communicator." I trust you found the insights from today's episode valuable. This book is full of practical ideas that you can implement right away. So my recommendation for you today is to dive in and start putting one or more of them into action. Until next time, stay curious and keep embracing the wonders of knowledge. Talk to you soon. You've been listening to Philosopher Insights with your host, Herb Lambert. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.